welcome to Blockchain Gaming World with me, John Jordan. So this week I've been working on a presentation that I'm giving tomorrow, which has been quite difficult to do, as we'll get to. And I guess it's just a reminder that things in crypto happen pretty fast, up and down. And just because things have gone down doesn't mean they can't go down any further, and just because things have gone up doesn't mean they can't go up any further. So that's our sort of caveat before what's going on here. So I may have to change the entire presentation tomorrow, but see where we're going to go. So this is basically like an overview of sort of where we've been in 2022. And originally I was going to kind of sort of subtitle this as a year from the all-time high. So this time a year ago in November 2021, pretty much everything was at an all-time high, all the tokens, and a lot of the activity around sort of NFTs, although that was a bit into 2022, as we'll see. But basically, this is 1 year on from that, and then this week we've had like a massive, again, sort of systemic shock with FTX sort of going under, being bought out by Binance, a whole bunch of stuff behind the scenes. On that, that's probably had a knock-on effect on a whole bunch of other currencies. So everything's down at least sort of 10%. Some things are down 20%, and we're still falling. So we'll see where we end up, I suppose. So this is just pull this. I mean, all this is going to be out of date straight away. But FTX, the FTT token, underlying token for the FTX exchange, down 82% in the last 7 days. Really, in the last 2 days. And Solana down 31% in the last 24 hours. So Solana very much linked to FTX. The rise of FTX as an exchange was very much linked to the rise of Solana as a sort of Ethereum rival last year. And Solana had been down pretty heavily anyway up to this point, and that seems to be the main sort of casualty as opposed to FTX as well. But Matic's down, ETH's down, everything's down. So that's sort of where we are with that. I'm not going to go into details of what's going on in terms of FTX and Binance. Interesting here, getting all the jokers on Twitter. They're called digital assets because they go from 1 to 0. But of course, anyone who's had been bored by me at any point about blockchain will know thesis number 1: digital asset value eventually trends to 1 or 0. So this is what we expect. So my view has always been there are a vast oversupply of cryptocurrencies, of digital assets, of NFTs. The vast majority of these projects are going to go to 0 in the long term, because that's just how the dynamics of these things work. If you sort of you need scale, you need confidence, and those things act as a flywheel. So if you have a good project that is sort of doing well, then people have more confidence in it, then more money flows into it, then it sort of takes money out of other projects. So eventually everything will go to 1 or 0. But that stage, what do we mean by 1? That's the interesting thing. I just basically mean most blockchain assets, most cryptocurrencies will just be sort of worthless, illiquid, and no one will want to own them. And other ones, doesn't really matter what the price is, they will go to some token value. Could be $10, could be $1,000. I'm not saying what Bitcoin is going to be as a asset, but clearly Bitcoin is a asset that is valuable, because the price changes from whatever it's been up to 60,000 down to in recent past $3,000. So we're not saying these things aren't volatile, but we're saying they either go down to 1 or 0. So from that point of view, the Twitter jokers are half correct. So what's been going on? I just did this morning, so again I say this will be wrong now, but so Bitcoin compared to, this is the 1 year performance. So basically down from this is mainly for all these is all-time highs. So even the sort of very sort of seen as sort of solid in crypto senses, Bitcoin and Ether are down 70% over the year. Things like Solana down down a lot, and even some of the game things, which obviously I'm going to focus about, are down pretty heavily. 95% for Axie, 80% for Mana, Decentraland, that is, and Sand. Gala not quite so bad, but everything's sort of seeing the same sort of dynamic. But if we sort of take a sort of longer term view, or even that a longer term view, but not a long term view. So what I've done here on this graph, again, this is a bit out of date. I did this at the start of the week, but we can see here on the horizontal scale we have the 1 year performance. So that's basically what we've seen in the previous slide. So everything is down in terms of 1 year performance, because everything a year ago was at an all-time high pretty much. But then if we look on the vertical scale, we look at the 2-year performance. So what's happened over 2 years, and we sort of see this sort of dichotomy, I suppose. Everything's sort of down, at least 70% today. Some things are down a lot more, 95% for AXI. But if we look over 2 years, things are up quite a lot. So even things like even ETH and Bitcoin, I can say probably Bitcoin may be down now, but a lot of these, even these sort of serious tokens, are still sort of up where they were 2 years ago. And stuff like Flow and Sol, which even though they've gone down a lot now, are still up quite a lot over 2 years, because their performance has happened in the past 2 years. So 2 years ago, sort of they were at the cheapest you could get them, effectively. So this is sort of going back to the one and zero thing. Is the Solana token going to go to zero, or the Flow token going to go to zero? Well, clearly it could do, but these have gone up already, 1,500%. It's a bit more sort of dynamic in terms of these smaller sort of metaverse and blockchain game tokens. So again, they've fallen sort of in some cases more, in some cases less, but they're up sort of similar amounts to some of these other sort of L1. So Sand up 2,000%, AXI 2,500%. So these would sort of be projects that I would be thinking these are not zeros in the long term. These are ones, but not investment advice. But it just goes to show that things can come down a lot, but they've gone up a lot. So it slightly depends on your sort of your viewpoint in how you see sort of the ups and downs, and partly obviously some people was sort of when you bought into these systems. If we look at blockchain game projects, we can see, going back to the 1 and 0 thing, a lot of these ones are down a lot, and a lot of them are actually from their all-time. So these all-time highs and all-time lows. So sort of all-time highs on the horizontal scale is sort of what we saw in the previous graphs. That's sort of generally what happened over the past year, but it could be different for some things. But if you think, how is a project down from its all-time high? How is it up from its all-time low, or the case of its IDO, or sort of when the token was first made available for investors? So again, the vast majority of these tokens are down over 80%, and a lot of them are not up very much from their all-time lows, because they're sort of at their all-time lows, or the all-time lows happened this year. But that's, a certain grouping of them, some similar names to what we've seen previously, are up over 1,000%. This is a log scale, so some of these are up, tens of thousands of percent potentially, from if you were early into these projects. So again, it's just this sort of very weird sort of scaling thing that goes on, and obviously these projects can still go to zero. I'm not suggesting they aren't, but they have to go down really a phenomenal amount still. So just to sort of bear that in mind, and I think that sort of gets us to think less about the exact price of things, and just whether things have a community that is sort of coalesced around them, because they're just going to go up and down again over time. Okay, let's think a bit more about some other assets. So this is looking at NFTs. So obviously NFTs have been this big sort of craze, particularly this time last year and for the next sort of few months. And several times we've seen this sort of NFT is dead sort of thing going on. So this is looking at OpenSea. This is data from June Analytics, where people can just sort of create their own dashboards based on open data. This is from Ethereum. So this is looking at the weekly cumulative NFT volume in dollars on OpenSea. So what we can see, this is looking at sort of trading volumes, which obviously are volatile, and we can see here the end of December last year, the start of January, we saw these enormously high spikes in trading volume around NFTs. So we saw $5-6 billion worth of trading in a week. Obviously, this is also the point at which ETH was over $4,000. So you have a sort of a compounding going on here, that not only was the NFT market very hot, then ETH was very hot. So you sort of have this sort of volume in dollars is particularly high. It's interesting to see that it sort of drops off actually quite quickly into January and February, then picks up again actually in March and April. So still doing, getting off as like $2 billion, even though ETH prices dropped off quite a lot. And then you have this big drop off in May. So May was when the Terra blockchain collapsed and Luna depegged and all that sort of weird stuff, or the Luna stablecoin. So that was sort of the start of the clear start of the sort of current bear market that we're still in and going through. And obviously, as you have a sort of a coupled impact when things are going well. You have a coupled impact when things are going badly. So people aren't trading NFTs so much, and the price of ETH is going down. So you see this sort of big decline. But you can still see, it's not gone to zero. It's sort of maybe an equivalent level to what it was. Maybe getting on for sort of 2-ish years ago. So there is definitely this dynamic, but there's also this dynamic. So this is looking at the number of monthly active traders on Ethereum, on OpenSea using Ethereum. Obviously, OpenSea now handles other blockchains as well. So looking, registered users with at least one transaction. So I'm not saying that's the best metric to look at, but it's certainly sort of an equivalent, the opposite side of the coin compared to NFT trading volumes in dollar. So we can see here at a peak we're having, getting over 500, over 500,000 people, monthly active traders trading at least once, so buying at least one NFT. And we have that again, obviously the same sort of time, December, end of December, start of January. This is in months. But we can see here what's interesting is clearly there is a fall, but the fall is nothing like as sort of a dynamic, is nothing like as sort of catastrophic, I suppose, as you sort of see with trading volumes, and we wouldn't expect it to be. And we can also see that now we're having whatever 300,000 people doing at least one trade on OpenSea, compared to that's still higher than it was, or higher than it was in sort of October, or sort of the fall of 2021. So it looks like volumes are down a lot, which is sort of what we'd expect, but actually the decline of people actually trading at least one of these, obviously they may be selling, maybe people sort of selling out, and other people sort of buying in a lower price who hold more NFTs. We don't really know the dynamic there, but certainly we're very different here to what was going on at the start of 2021. So as ever, you sort of pay your money, you take your pick on what's going on in terms of are people ever going to buy NFTs again? And sort of underpinning all this sort of stuff, it's a sort of cliche now that we say in bear markets people build, but there is actually as we'll look in various projects, in various sort of sectors, I should say, there is quite a lot of innovation going on. So obviously marketplaces, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with royalties, and can they be enforced, and lots of people very annoyed about various decisions that marketplaces are making or feel they have to make. But this is looking at August, so this is like the last few months, and this is looking at the trading volume in ETH on marketplaces. A whole bunch of marketplaces here, all different sort of slightly different sort of angles here. So OpenSea is the biggest one still, in blue, and then we have sort of Genie and Gem, which are sort of aggregators, and they've been acquired by the companies. And looks rare, sort of doing this sort of has the first token that rewarded you with tokens for trading. And then this big sort of orange bar here, so Blur, sort of has a sort of mixture of all the above. It is a marketplace, it is an aggregator, it has going to have a token coming out next year, so it's encouraging lots of people to take their trading from OpenSea to do it on Blur, because you're going to get rewarded with this token airdrop. It's sort of designed for more high frequency traders. It's got some nice features in there, so we're seeing sort of a big sort of pump over the last few weeks. I'm not saying that's going to continue, but we can just see there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. Even though this sort of market looks like it's sort of in decline, there is a whole bunch of sort of stuff happening on the marketplace side, and clearly there is on the sort of project side as well. So this is looking at the trading volume in dollars for these NFT projects. This is actually covering all chains, although it's all Ethereum really, mainly Ethereum. So this is Crypto Slam. This is looking at NFT collection rankings in sales over the last 30 days. So a lot of the usual suspects when it comes to NFT PFP collection. So we have CloneX, Azuri, Other Deeds, Mutant Ape, CryptoPunks, Bored Apes. Art Gobblers is a sort of a new project that's sort of come in there, an interesting sort of mix up of sort of PFPs and creation, artwork creation, and sort of synthesis and tokens and all this sort of stuff. So a little bit up and down on that one, but that sort of captured people's attention. And then the interesting bit here is, we have So Rare, a fantasy soccer game, licensed soccer game, and Gods Unchained, this trading card game. Broadly, I suppose, a bit of a Hearthstone inspired game. So these are sort of trading well. So they've done $31 million of trading for So Rare in the last month, and $24 million for Gods Unchained in the last month. So that puts them, in the top 5. So that's interesting, and they have sort of actually been doing quite well for the last kind of couple of months. What's interesting is a number of transactions. So we can see here stuff like Bored Apes. Obviously, these are selling for still, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So there's been 300 and 37 transactions in the last month. For Sorare, we have over 500,000 transactions. So we can sort of see it's the same number in terms of trading volume, but we just see many more people, many more transactions, and obviously the fact is, well, some of these things might sell for thousands of dollars. Most of them are selling for tens or ten sort of single dollars or tens of dollars sort of thing. So we sort of see there is something different going on when games sort of come to the fore, and you're sort of seeing the audience sort of breaking out of this sort of very rarefied people trading very expensive assets for their own specific sort of flex reasons. And there is community around it, these sort of things. But when we look for mass market stuff, we're always sort of looking for games. So that's a sort of a bright spot that people are just they do want to own these sort of things, but equally they're owning them for a reason, which is playing the game, which is what we expect to see sort of clearly more of over time. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Digidai Gaku. I'm not going to go into massive detail on it. It is probably the most interesting blockchain game project that probably in 2022 really, but certainly over the last few months. So this is these characters that sort of they are 2,022 of these were created, and obviously all different. And there's a sort of whole game theory behind it. I'm not going to go into all the detail, but it's sort of famously Gabriel Leiden, who was the co-founder of Machine Zone, who did Game of War and all these very big free-to-play mobile game, 4X games, and did several billion-dollar games in terms of actually multiple billions of dollars in terms of lifetime value. Was very focused on marketing, spent a lot of money on marketing, but really sort of understood the flywheel of how free-to-play mobile worked, and is now sort of coming into the blockchain space. So released these sort of NFTs. Clearly, this is not mass market because there's only 2,000 of them, and they're currently sort of trading at $20,000. But the interesting sort of game theory here is what happened was you bought, if you're lucky enough to mint one of those or bought one of those original NFTs, you then got this spirit version of those, and then you could either keep that or sell that, and then became this game where you could create these new warrior sort of characters, and it depended on if you were just burning the spirit or you were burning your spirit with the correct original Genesis NFT that had the right serial number, and you got sort of different versions of that. And you sort of then end up with the situation where if you've sort of kept all of your NFTs, you start with the original one, and then you have this sort of hero one you've created, which is going to be obviously there's the same number of these because that's going to be used in the game. The original one is seen as more of an NFT factory, and the NFT factory bit is you have these collaborations. So there's been this collaboration with this other game called Castaway, and you get a version of your Genesis to play in the Castaway game, and then if you play the game, you get this. This is a soulbound. I'm not going into all that. You have another NFT you get, and then the next bit of the game theory for Digidai Gaku is there's going to be these dark spirits, and that's going to extend the collection from 2,000 to 10,000. So we have 6,000 sort of. So if you hold an original one, you get these. You've got these dark spirit or dark spirit hero NFTs that will let you basically mint out these new characters, but there's 6,000 new characters, 6,000 characters that will sort of expand the audience. And so it all gets very complicated. It's not quite clear what the game is going to be. There's as we'll sort of look at the company behind it, Limit Break, raised $200 million, which even for blockchain is a pretty sizable amount. They've booked a Super Bowl ad. They've got all this sort of stuff going on there. So they're really using NFTs as a way of sort of creating community and creating buzz and creating sort of interest, because these things are valuable, and there's innovation around it as well. So I think we're only really scratching the surface of what these sort of assets can do. Certainly when it comes to use of NFTs and I think even tokens as well. A lot of this stuff is still happening, and pioneers are building this sort of stuff out. Okay, in terms of looking at blockchain games that are out there, actually not much has changed in 2022. I'm going to have to do lots of videos about this, so I won't go into too much detail. So the most popular games is in terms of on-chain activity, data from DappRadar, Splinterlands, Alien Worlds, basically sort of a 200,000-ish. So Splinterlands did this big change in its reward structure, and a lot of bots got sort of left the ecosystem. Not going to really talk about sort of the value of bots. I've done all that in the past, but so it dropped its daily active unique wallet user base by about 2/3. It's sort of picked up a bit since then. So both of these games very on-chain. Splinterlands, again, a bit more like a sort of Hearthstone type sort of trading card game. A bunch of other stuff going on there. They're doing some other games and building out their land, a whole bunch of meta stuff. Alien World's doing something similar with DAOs. Other games sort of go up and down. I mean, Active Infinity, we sort of know the dynamics around that game we're waiting for that to be rebuilt and go through the app stores, which they didn't do before. So we'll see if they can sort of resurrect that. But actually, not a lot of change really has happened. So there's not been a lot of sort of new games sort of coming in and doing a lot of on-chain activity. And the existing one's not really sort of growing or sort of collapsing. So certainly something where we have seen a lot of activity, a lot of interest, and a lot of discussion. And again, sort of plays into whatever narrative you want to in terms of growth or decline. Is in terms of funding. So this is in terms of what I call the blockchain game sector. And that's quite a broad approach. So it's blockchain games, clearly, metaverses, some tooling stuff around wallets and infrastructure and onboarding, and potentially some ecosystem funds specifically for sort of games and stuff. So it's it is a slightly you sort of have to choose what sort of funding you put into these sort of barrels, buckets, I suppose. But we can see some sort of clear trends. The breakdown here is in blue is sort of what I've taken from sort of, say, traditional VCs, and red is more, as I say, sort of IDOs, so people selling tokens to anyone or selling NFTs. So that's prior to how I break it down. We can see here back to May 2021, sorry. So not really much going on here. September 2021 is when it really sort of kicks off with some big traditional VC funding going on. 2022, some really big sort of months. So months was easily $1 billion going in. May again, this big sort of highlight in the year when we have the Bored Ape Yoga Labs does its other deeds NFT drop. Get that right? It's metaverse. So this is sort of the height of metaverse. After May, we have sort of Terra and all that sort of stuff going on. So a big drop off. But we're still, still not zero. Obviously dropped off sort of quite a lot. There's obviously macro stuff going on here with inflation and sort of fuel prices and sort of uncertainty about global economy and Russia, Ukraine, all this sort of stuff going in, feeding into this as well. But we can still see, some big funding rounds going on. If you look at it by quarter, certainly you can see the first quarter one and quarter two, very large. Quarter four, obviously, we're still in the middle of that. So, but $4.3 billion in 2021, give thereabouts. 2022 currently 4.7, so up 75%. And probably, I imagine probably get up to about 8 billion, something like that. I would think. December will be quiet, I imagine, and maybe November will be quiet as well. But you can still see even now, it's substantially up. So it's been a good year for funding, and obviously these projects being funded, some of them not successful, and a lot of projects now need to sort of refund, which is difficult. But there clearly are some interesting projects coming out off the back of that. You don't spend $7 billion without sort of stuff actually sort of coming out. So in terms of deals, again, it's maybe the other side of the coin a little bit, that the drop off is there, but it's not quite as sort of sustained, or not quite as obvious in terms of the dollars. In the dollar terms, a lot of these deals are sort of seed deals, pre-seed deals, Series A rounds, which tend to be smaller. It's the really big rounds are the Series C and the strategic rounds. So those are the ones that sort of have stopped happening since May, and so that's sort of taken some of the the headline figures off the monthly funding. So we're still doing like 18 deals announced in September, 20 in October. Again, you have to be a little bit careful. You can sort of make up. You can go and find deals, very small deals if you want to, but try to keep a sort of sustained, consistent sort of approach to this. So that's roughly where we are, and we can see sort of March was the biggest funding and the most deals announced, over 50. Okay, let's have a look at some of the big raises. So this is just across the entire sector. So some large raises for, these are mainly not games. So Animoca Brands, this is actually sort of Animoca Brands that sort of invests in other companies, does build its own games, but so this is more like an investment sort of strategic rounds. We have obviously metaverse stuff, some community stuff, marketplaces. Say Limit Break here with its Didi Daigaku, $200 million, very big round. Blockchain, so Immutable, the company behind Immutable X, that is a specifically gaming focused blockchain, raising money for its own games and sort of ecosystem stuff. Some metaverse, Genius's avatar system. Sky Mavis is company behind Axie Infinity, Homer Games, actually quite a recent one, a hyper casual mobile game company. So a whole bunch of stuff, fairly large sums of money. If we look specifically at games, not quite so big. So the big money is going into things that are a more ambitious sort of play. We have Limit Break, Homer, Network Studios, a whole bunch of other. These are still fairly sort of big rounds. Some of these sort of companies pivoting a little bit from Web 2 to Web 3, but these are sort of still large sums of money for any games company. If we look at VCs a little bit, so interesting to have a look at VCs. I spend a lot of time doing that. Obviously, have a VC sort of hat on. So if this is my own graph, this is my own data. Again, I hope pretty accurate. But if we look at the VCs who did the most deals in the sector, this is really from sort of September 2021 to the present. Animeca Brands by far doing the most deals. So again, I mean, I think historically it has publicly said it's done over 300 Web3 deals in total. I'm looking at specifically game sort of deals, so 71 of those, by far and away the most. But Animeca Brands has tended not to lead deals and tended to its approach has very much been let's get these projects funded and see what happens. So it's not doing it on a very I mean, thoughtful maybe is the wrong word, but it's not doing it in a way that a traditional investor would do, which would be sort of being quite thoughtful and thinking about how to deploy your money in the most cost-effective way. Animeca Brands doesn't have any LPs; it's basically raised money to invest, and it thinks make the pie bigger rather than try and get the biggest slice of the pie. Polygon Studios sort of similar. So Polygon, obviously a blockchain, it does a lot of investment into sort of encouraging companies to build on its own blockchain. So these are working in a slightly different way. What I call degens, these tend to be funds, maybe not officially funds, but the people who've made a lot of money in crypto over the last few years, and people want to give them money to invest further, or they're investing their own money. They tend to invest in tokens. They tend not to have been around for a long period of time. So we'll see, in the future how many of those survive and how many of them are sort of blown up in the current market conditions. But they have been very active. And I should say degen is sort of, in a sense, can be a term of endearment, not in all cases. These are just doing a lot of deals. In some cases their deals are very good, or some of the companies are investing in are very good. In some cases the companies are investing in terrible. But we can just see there's a lot of stuff going on here. YGG as a guild, again, very active. It's investing in for different reasons. So it's investing to get assets, to get access to assets in these games that are in development, so it can get potentially get scholars in there playing these games. Our friends, not our friends, Amadira Research, obviously part of the FTX exchange. So again, they've been very active, 25 deals. We'll see what happens to those, because they basically look like they're sort of gone now as a going concern. And also just mentioned, so Bitcraft is a sort of traditional games investor. Started out doing a lot of esports stuff, moved more into sort of normal games, and now it's been very active in Web3, working with Delphi Digital. So again, they're sort of 20 deals. We can sort of break this down into again, sort of look at the different sort of flavors of investors. So what I call traditional investors. So these are investors who have invested in things other than crypto, but are some of them very active in crypto. So Andreessen Horowitz, obviously pretty well known. They have a big crypto fund, actually 4 crypto funds. They've got a specific games fund, done 17 deals. Lightspeed Venture, again, a big traditional sort of West Coast venture fund, very associated actually with Solana. So we'll see how that pans out for them. Solana being really hit by the FTX situation at the moment. But a whole bunch of other names we know, like Sequoia. These traditional ones tend to do obviously much fewer deals than the degens. So picking the games that they really want to go with, and maybe a bit more leading deals, putting together sort of funds and thinking about the long term. Convoy Ventures is pretty interesting. They were very early into Axie Infinity. Sky Mavis, one of the early investors into Sky Mavis. They've done very well out of that, and obviously when you have those sort of names on your sort of client list, then that you can then raise more sort of funds on the back of that, which is what Convoy have done. What I call crypto VCs. So these are VCs who are not degens, hopefully, but they are people who sort of just invest in Web3 and crypto. They don't invest in non-crypto projects. So Hash, pretty well known. They again were a very early investor into Axie Infinity, and Sky Mavis did very well out of that, but then got the South Korean got massively hit when Luna went down. So done a lot of investments. Not quite sure sort of where they are at the moment, but they've got probably a lot of good investments in there. Not quite sure how much capital they've got if they've lost a lot. Delphi Digital, I mentioned, work with Bitcraft, so they tend to invest together. And a whole bunch of these Every Realm, very much focused on metaverse stuff. So there we go. So some of these, again, these tend to be investing sort of smaller amounts than the traditional investors. They tend to have sort of smaller amounts to invest as well. And then you have the game investors. So these are funds who just invest in games. I mentioned Bitcraft. The other big one who's really gone, the big ones who've really gone in for Web3 are Griffin, who are associated with LionTree, which is a big US fund. So they've been very active. They've raised quite a lot of money off the back of their sort of previous success in some blockchain projects, very much associated with Forte. As a platform, Play Ventures, sort of interesting fund split between Singapore and Finland. Two sort of two founders who raised a lot of money, did really well out of crypto, then have a specific crypto fund. They've been pretty active. Other games funds tend to have been less active, so sort of picking their investments and not going too degen on that, which is obviously proven to be good in the current situation. So not going to go through this list. Obviously, this is a massive list. This is like I have a big list of blockchain games, about 700 strong. That's open if you want to access it. And this is my tab, which I call most anticipated. So this is just my own sort of particular view on games that I think are particularly interesting. And there are about 45 of these. So this is just sort of going back into what's happened to all this funding. Obviously, a lot of it's gone in infrastructure and such like, but a lot of it has gone into games. And these are projects that are, in often cases, are increasingly developed by people who have made games before, who know what they're doing, who we know can make games, and who are adding blockchain in various ways, NFTs, tokens, other interesting sort of ways. So I'm not saying all these are going to be successful, but I think if you have, you can think there are at least sort of 50 high quality blockchain games that are doing something sort of novel and interesting, I think these would be the ones I'd be sort of spending time thinking about and engaging with to sort of see the hits of 2023, which is not to say there are going to be massive hits there, but I think these are people who are building out this sort of ecosystem of new experiences, and there just are a lot of very smart people now doing this, which is not to say any of them will succeed, but I kind of think the higher quality, the bigger this most anticipated list, and the higher quality of the people working on it, then obviously the likelihood that something happens in the near future gets stronger. Just a little bit, because I've just done this data partly, about what blockchains are on which chain. So this is sort of again looking at the data that I have from this big list, and at the moment this is sort of I don't think so interesting as a bit of data, but interesting to see how the trends happen over time. So most of the stuff is happening on sort of Ethereum, what we call EVM compatible chains. So if you look here, EVM compatible, so this is basically Ethereum virtual machine. Is the sort of how the smart contracts work, and lots of blockchains use Ethereum, so you can see Ethereum centric. So 73% of games that we know the blockchain of are on EVM chains, and 27% are on non-EVM chains. So if you come back to this, we can see specifically the two sort of big blockchains for games are BNB, the what you call the Binance Smart Chain, and Polygon, both roughly 15-16%, and Ethereum itself on 10%. So that's sort of where the bulk of stuff is, and obviously there are some of these that could be on multiple chains, so you could be on Ethereum and Polygon. There's quite a lot of that sort of stuff going on. In terms of the non-Ethereum stuff, Solana is sort of still the big one, although say that's sort of been under pressure in 2022. Some projects have left and gone on to other chains, and obviously the pressure now with Solana and the Sol token going down a lot. We'll see where those projects end up, and even Solana as a project sort of had problems with stability. So we'll see where that goes. Wax, based on the EOS blockchain, a 5% flow, a new blockchain which sort of hasn't quite fulfilled its potential yet, on 2%. And there's a whole bunch of these sort of more Ethereum focused ones. So Ronin from Sky Mavis, Immutable X, Scala, it's sort of its own sort of ecosystem, its own sort of sidechain really, and Avalanche. So I don't really expect this sort of percentage to change in terms of like sort of Polygon and BNB. BNB is very popular with Asian developers, because that's obviously sort of where Binance has its its sort of strength. But I guess what's interesting in 2023 is the likes of the sort of Ronin, Immutable X, Gala, Avalanche, Flows. Those are sort of the emerging chains, and which one of those, if any, can sort of move from the 3 to 5 to 10% in terms of projects, because I think Ethereum, Polygon, and BNB are going to be there and thereabouts now for the next year or so. So if Solana's going to lose some stuff, where's that going to go? And these other blockchains that have raised quite a bit of money, have money in their ecosystem. So say Flow has $600 million in its ecosystem. What's it going to do that with? What games can it attract? So there's a bunch of multi-chain stuff. There are some other chains out there. Obviously, loads of other chains out there. You can see Cardano, Algorand, Hedera, Hashgraph, BSV, Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. A whole bunch out there. So maybe there'll be some surprising emergence from there, but probably I think over 2023 we'll see that sort of element go down. And there's a whole bunch of actually unknown ones, which not quite clear if those projects are still alive, or maybe they just haven't made a choice on what chain they're going to go on. There are a bunch of new chains launching, so there are things like Suri and Lamina One and things like that. So maybe some of those will sort of end up in this sort of graph as well. So where are we? So challenges. I mean, there's always loads of challenges. Go on for forever really about the challenges. So market sentiment probably for the next 6 months or so is going to be difficult. Maybe the next year or so. Lots of things. It's sort of, if it's hard to raise money, then projects go bust or sort of get mothballed. Marketplaces and royalties is an ongoing thing. If you create NFTs but you can't get money when they are traded, because marketplaces aren't supporting those sort of things, then how do projects get the money to make how do developers get money to make projects in the first place, and how do they make profit to sustain those? Distribution. So we'll see how the Apple App Store rules plan out. Some people are very positive about it, some people not so much. But stuff like app stores and Steam and things like that are clearly a sort of medium-term problem. If you don't have, or there are no problem, but if you had those sort of platforms, then it would make things much easier. And generally sort of onboarding, which is sort of part of creating wallets and getting people to buy things and getting people not to lose passwords in a way that will mean they lose their assets. That's all sort of part of mass market adoption. So a whole bunch of other stuff, I guess you could argue. But I think those are some of the key ones. But I think the opportunities, as ever, are still massive, and the fact that we haven't sort of quite got there yet is maybe not a great surprise, because these are pretty ambitious, and I think that's sort of where blockchain games do end up. I still kind of think, as I've waffled on for years, in 10 years' time, every game uses blockchain in some way, I think. And that's the thing about sort of creating a one. So going back to our original, digital assets, go from 1 to 0. Well, some of these are going to create ones, and some of them are going to create, very big ones without breaking the analogy. So, I think, we've never had a $1 trillion game. We've had a $10 billion mobile game. I assume at some point, in enough years, there'll be a $100 million game. But the first $1 trillion game, in terms of sort of the economy in there, I think you have to have blockchain to enable that. So if that ever happens, I don't see why not. And I think there's other sort of fundamental building blocks is player ownership of in-game assets. I think is very valuable. Those don't have to be valuable assets, but if players can own their assets, some of those assets I think will be valuable, certainly over time. And I think the other thing is around sort of pricing and NFTs in general. NFTs allow players, communities, or whatever users to price their passions. So some people might not care less about a Bored Ape, and some people might that might be the most important thing that they own in their lives. And to decentralize those sort of valuations, I think again in the long term is going to be pretty valuable. So there we go. A sort of slice into my brain of where we are in sort of mid-November 20 or early November 2022. It could all change next week as ever, and I'll have to do another video, I suppose. But hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.